The morning sun was just starting to warm up the fields as I went about my usual chores, feeding the chickens, checking the irrigation lines, and making sure the crops were coming along nicely. There's something about the quiet hum of nature that just sets my mind at ease. That peace didn't last long, though. Out of nowhere, I spot a bunch of strangers wandering around my land like they own the place. Tape measures out, clipboards in hand, and wearing those bright orange safety vests that practically scream, "official business." I wipe my hands on my jeans and head over, eyebrows raised. One guy, tall, skinny, with glasses perched on his nose, doesn't even look up from his clipboard when I ask, "Can I help you folks with something?" He just shrugs and mutters, "Just doing our job." My patience thins real quick. And what job would that be exactly? Another one. A lady with a headset and way too much attitude glances at me with a smirk. "We're conducting an assessment for the new apartment complex. HOA sent us." I feel my jaw clench. Apartment complex? On my farm? Who the hell gave permission for that? Right on cue. Karen appears like a bad smell, strutting up with that self-satisfied smirk plastered across her face. Today she's decked out in one of her usual pastel cardigans, clutching a clipboard of her own like it's the holy grail of authority. "Oh, didn't you get the notice?" she coos, dripping with fake sweetness. "The HOA board has decided that your land would be much better suited for a community development project. Think of all the new residents. It'll boost property values." I stare at her like she's just sprouted a second head. "You're out of your mind. This is private property. You don't get to just decide to plow it under for some cookie-cutter apartments." Karen waves a hand dismissively. "The HOA has jurisdiction over all property improvements in the community. You're being selfish, holding on to all this land when we could be accommodating new families." My hands curl into fists, but I keep my voice level. "This land's been in my family for generations. I got permits, I pay my taxes, and this farm is legally protected. You don't get to just bulldoze it because you feel like playing real estate mogul." The survey crew is looking more than a little uncomfortable now, glancing between me and Karen like they're starting to realize they might be caught up in something way over their heads. Karen scoffs and flips through her clipboard, muttering about zoning revisions and collective benefit. I snatch the papers right out of her hands and skim through them. Sure enough, it's all HOA nonsense. Nothing legally binding, just a bunch of wishful thinking and vague proposals. I hand them back, shaking my head. "You're gonna regret this, Karen. You can't just waltz in and decide to take my land. I'm not budging." She huffs, clearly not used to being told no. "We'll see about that," she snaps before stomping off with her entourage in tow. As I watch them go, I can't help but feel a storm brewing. Karen thinks she can just steamroll me and my farm for some shiny new apartments. Not on my watch. I pull out my phone and start making calls. Lawyers, zoning officials, anyone who can help me put a stop to this nonsense before it gains traction. If Karen wants a fight, she's picked the wrong farmer. The next morning, I'm out by the barn, fixing a busted latch when I hear that grating, nails on a chalkboard voice screeching from the end of the driveway. I turn around to see Karen marching up, clipboard in hand like she's about to conduct a full-on military inspection. Behind her, a couple of HOA lackeys shuffle along, looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. She doesn't even bother with a greeting, just goes straight to barking orders at the survey crew who's back on my land, marking spots with neon flags. "Make sure to get measurements on that east side. We'll need space for the parking lot and playground." I stride over, not even trying to hide my annoyance. "Karen, what the hell do you think you're doing on my property again?" She whirls around, nose in the air like she's smelling something foul. "Oh, didn't you hear?" she sneers. "The HOA has officially acquired this land for development. It's going to be the new Oakwood luxury apartments. You've been given proper notice and should have vacated by now. You're trespassing on HOA property." I can't help but laugh. Proper notice? Lady, I haven't gotten so much as a single piece of paper about any of this. And newsflash, this farm's been in my family for decades. You can't just snatch it up because you feel like it. She crosses her arms like she's got me cornered. "Oh, we posted the notice on the community board. It's not my fault if you're too lazy to check it." I let out a slow, Disbelieving breath, trying not to lose my temper. Karen, you seriously think posting some nonsense on a board 3 miles away counts as serving me notice? This is private property. You can't just take it without a court order. She gives me that infuriating fake smile, the kind that's more of a snarl. Oh, but we did. The HOA voted unanimously to claim the land for community benefit. You're just being stubborn. I narrow my eyes. You can vote all you want. It doesn't make it legal. Last time I checked, the HOA doesn't have the authority to seize private property. Karen just waves me off, clearly not interested in any actual facts. Well, you can take it up with the police. I've already called them to remove the squatter. I stare at her deadpan. The squatter? You mean me, on my own farm? She grins like she's won the lottery. Exactly. You're illegally occupying HOA property, and the police are on their way to deal with it. Should have just moved out quietly when you had the chance. I take a slow, deep breath, suppressing the urge to let loose a string of curse words that would make a sailor blush. Instead, I just smile and say, "All right, Karen, let's see how that works out for you." She looks way too smug, already picturing me dragged off my own land in handcuffs. I just lean back against the barn, crossing my arms and waiting for the inevitable. If she thinks she's about to get me tossed off my property, she's in for one hell of a wake-up call. As I wait for the cops to arrive, I can't help but wonder how she got it into her head that bullying me off my land was gonna fly. If Karen wants a showdown, she's about to get one, and I'm betting she's not gonna like the outcome. About 10 minutes later, I spot the familiar blue and red lights flickering through the trees as a couple of patrol cars roll up the driveway. Karen's practically vibrating with excitement, waving them down like she's directing traffic. As soon as they step out, she pounces on them, pointing at me like I'm some kind of fugitive. "There he is," she shrieks, all righteous fury. "That man is trespassing on HOA property and refusing to vacate. You need to arrest him immediately and escort him off the premises." The officers glance at each other, clearly caught off guard by her level of enthusiasm. One of them nods politely, trying to keep a straight face. "Ma'am, can you just slow down and explain what's going on here?" Karen doesn't even pause for breath. "This land is now officially HOA property. We're developing it into luxury apartments, and this squatter refuses to leave. We have a court ruling and everything. He's breaking the law." The officers both look at me, clearly recognizing me right away. One of them, Officer Daniels, gives me a quick nod. "Morning, Your Honor," he says calmly. "Is there a problem here?" Karen's face goes beet red, and she sputters like a broken engine. "Your Honor? What are you talking about? He's just a stubborn farmer refusing to follow HOA regulations." Daniels tries to keep his professional composure, but I can see the hint of a smirk breaking through. "Ma'am, this is Judge Thompson," he says evenly. "He's the county judge, and as far as I know, this farm has been in his family for decades." Karen's jaw practically hits the ground, and she stares at me like she's seeing a ghost. "A judge? You're joking." No way, he's just some backwoods farmer." I raise an eyebrow, giving her a slow, deliberate nod. "Yep. And also the guy who signs off on legal property disputes in this county. Funny how that works." Karen's face goes from red to ghostly pale, and she starts stumbling over her words. But the HOA voted. We posted a notice on the board, on the..." Daniels gives her a flat look. "Ma'am, that's not how property acquisition works. Even if the HOA wanted to claim this land, it would have to go through a legal process, including a court hearing and official documentation, none of which happened." Karen's eyes dart back and forth between us, like she's desperately searching for a way out of this mess. But I didn't know." The other officer, Ramirez, chimes in. "Making a false report to law enforcement is a serious offense, ma'am. You might want to think twice before calling the cops over bogus claims." Karen's mouth opens and closes, like a fish gasping for air. And for the first time in her life, she's completely speechless. Daniels gives me a respectful nod. "Everything good here, Judge?" I shrug casually. "Just another day on the farm. Appreciate you boys coming out to clear things up." Daniels tips his hat. "Anytime. Let us know if she causes more trouble. As they head back to their cars, Karen stands there, trembling, clearly too stunned to even process what just happened. I give her a little nod. You're welcome to leave now. And maybe next time, learn how the law actually works before you go around trying to steal people's land. She doesn't say a word, just turns on her heel and stumbles off down the driveway, looking like a whipped dog. I can't help but chuckle as I head back to the barn, making a mental note to have a nice chat with the HOA board about their rogue president. Karen's face goes from flushed red to ghostly white as reality finally hits her like a brick to the face. She stammers, still trying to piece together what just happened, while I just cross my arms and give her a little smirk. It's almost pitiful how fast her bravado crumbles. "Wait, you're a judge?" she finally manages to choke out, eyes wide with panic. I nod, not bothering to hide my amusement. "Yep, county judge, actually, which means I know a thing or two about property rights and legal processes. Speaking of which," I turn to the officers, who are doing their best not to laugh. "Just so we're clear, this property has been in my family for generations. I've got the deed, and there's never been any court ruling to transfer ownership. In fact, no legal action has even been filed." Officer Daniels pulls out his notepad, glancing between me and Karen. "Ma'am, do you have any documentation to back up your claim about the court order? Because right now, this doesn't seem to be adding up." Karen's eyes dart around like she's looking for an escape hatch. The board voted. We put up notices. The HOA agreed that the land was detrimental to the community aesthetic. It's practically abandoned." I can't help but snort at that one. Abandoned? Lady, I'm out here every day keeping this place running. Just because you don't like the look of a working farm doesn't mean it's abandoned. Officer Ramirez raises an eyebrow. "Ma'am, even if the HOA voted, that doesn't equate to legal ownership. You can't just take someone's land because you think it's an eyesore. And posting a notice on a community board isn't the same as a court order." Karen's mouth keeps opening and closing like she's trying to form an argument, but the words just won't cooperate. But the HOA has authority. I'm the president. I make the rules." Daniel shakes his head, clearly getting tired of the circus act. "HOA guidelines don't supersede state or county law. You can't seize private property without due process. Attempting to do so is not only illegal, but could also be considered harassment. You're on thin ice here." Karen looks like she's about to collapse, all the wind knocked out of her sails. I decide to twist the knife just a little. "And Karen, just a friendly reminder, falsely reporting a crime to law enforcement can land you in serious trouble. You might want to be a little more careful about calling the cops on things you don't understand." She lets out a strangled noise that's somewhere between a whimper and a groan. The officers give me a nod of respect, and Daniels speaks up one last time. "We'll file a report on the incident, Your Honor. Let us know if you need any follow-up." "Appreciate it," I reply with a smile. As the officers head back to their cars, Karen just stands there, deflated and humiliated, looking like she'd rather sink into the ground than face me. I take one last look at her, shaking my head. Maybe next time, don't go power tripping on people without knowing who you're dealing with. She doesn't respond, just turns and shuffles away like a dog with its tail between its legs. I give her a little wave and head back to my work, feeling pretty satisfied with how that all shook out. Karen's face is a mess of panic and desperation as she fumbles for any scrap of authority to cling to. You don't understand," she stammers. "The HOA board voted unanimously to repurpose this land. It's in the minutes. We have every right to make improvements for the community." I almost feel bad for her. Almost. "Karen," I say calmly, trying not to laugh. "A neighborhood vote doesn't mean squat when it comes to private property ownership. You can't just decide to take someone's land because it doesn't fit your vision of the neighborhood. You're way out of line here." Officer Daniels gives her a pointed look. "Ma'am, even if the board voted unanimously, that doesn't give you legal authority to seize or repurpose someone else's property. You need a court order for that, and from what we've seen, you don't have one. Making false claims and attempting to intimidate property owners is a serious offense." Karen looks like she just got slapped in the face, but I was just trying to improve the community, she mutters weakly. By breaking the law? I shoot back, not bothering to hide my smirk. Karen, you really need to understand that HOA power doesn't override state or federal law. You can't just march onto my farm and declare it yours because you're bored or annoyed by the aesthetic. Officer Ramirez steps in, giving Karen one last warning. Ma'am, if you continue making false reports or attempts to seize private property, we'll have no choice but to file charges. This needs to stop. Consider this your final warning. Karen's face goes white as a sheet. She's not used to being on the receiving end of consequences, and it's painfully obvious. Finally, she lets out a shaky breath, her shoulders slumping like all the fight's been drained out of her. I didn't know. I just thought... Yeah. Well, next time, maybe think before you act, I say, keeping my voice firm but calm. You're not the law around here, and if you're gonna play boss, at least learn the rules first. She mumbles some kind of half-hearted apology, barely making eye contact, and then turns to trudge back down the driveway like a dog with its tail between its legs. The officers exchange glances and give me a respectful nod before heading back to their patrol cars. As Karen slinks off, I can't help but feel a strange mix of relief and amusement. Part of me wants to feel sorry for her, but honestly, she brought it on herself by letting her little taste of power go to her head. Maybe this will be a wake-up call for her. Or maybe not. Either way, I'm just glad she's finally gone. With the commotion finally dying down, I shake my head and get back to work, letting the cool breeze carry away the remnants of Karen's ridiculous power trip. It's almost peaceful now that the drama queen has made her exit, and I can't help but chuckle at how thoroughly that backfired on her. Sometimes, people just need a reality check, and I guess today was Karen's turn to get hers. As the dust settles, I notice a few neighbors cautiously making their way over. Curiosity plastered all over their faces. They must have heard the whole circus. And I can't blame them for being intrigued. Word travels fast around here, especially when Karen's involved. Hey, Judge, one of them calls out, giving me a little wave. We saw what happened. Is everything okay? I nod, wiping the sweat off my brow. Yeah, it's all good. Just Karen doing her usual power trip. She thought she could seize my land without any legal basis. Had to set her straight. A few of them laugh, but there's a tension in the air, like they're holding back something. Finally, Mrs. Miller, an elderly woman who's lived here for decades, speaks up. She's been sniffing around my property too, she admits, wringing her hands. Kept telling me the HOA was gonna buy me out whether I liked it or not. Said it was for community development. My jaw tightens. She tried that with you too? Mrs. Miller nods, and a few others chime in with similar stories. Karen's been pushing hard to pressure people into selling, always with the same spiel about improving the neighborhood and bringing in new developments. It's clear now that her grand apartment scheme wasn't just a passing thought. It was a full-blown agenda. That woman's got a nerve, mutters Mike, the guy from 3 houses down. She cornered me at the grocery store last week, saying I'd be wise to sell before the HOA forced my hand. I thought she was bluffing. I take a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. This is worse than I thought. Listen, I say, raising my voice so everyone can hear. Karen doesn't have the authority to force anyone to sell their property. HOA guidelines don't trump property rights. I'm going to look into this as a judge and make sure she's not overstepping, or worse, breaking the law. There's a collective sigh of relief, and a few people even start clapping. It's clear they've been dealing with Karen's antics for way too long. And now that they know someone's standing up to her, they're finally feeling hopeful. Thanks for putting her in her place, Mike says with a grin. About time someone did. I wave it off with a smile. Just doing what's right. Don't let her bully you. If she tries anything else, come straight to me. We're not going to let her railroad the whole neighborhood. As the crowd disperses, I catch sight of Karen skulking around the corner of her house, probably still licking her wounds from earlier. I can't help but chuckle. Power hungry or not, she's definitely not used to being put in her place. I get back to my chores with a sense of satisfaction, knowing I've got the community's support and a plan to put an end to Karen's little empire. Sometimes being a good judge means standing up, not just in the courtroom, but right here at home, making sure folks know they've got someone on their side. As the sun sets and the sky turns a warm shade of orange, I can't help but feel a bit proud of how things turned out. Karen might have tried to bulldoze her way through, but today she learned a valuable lesson about power, respect, and knowing when to back off.